All right, you guys, let's get this started then, right?
Because really, what could go wrong once you press record, right?
Exactly, what could go wrong? It's all got to be very perfect.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Crazy People Doing a Podcast, the Crazy People Podcast. Today is just the captain of curiosity, Maurice Hoffman, and myself, as we do every fifth show, just us. So there's a lot of turmoil in business news these days, Maurice. Lots of layoffs and company changes and all kinds of things. Maybe we talk about that a little bit. What's your experience? What do you see?
Well, I hear a lot, right? And we discuss a lot offline or whatever. But we both thought it would be time that we actually address it here in a show.
Yeah.
And that is that we see companies handling their marketing differently, right? That they are either laying off the entire marketing department, which I think is not just crazy, it's just nuts. Right? Crazy, because crazy, we like crazy, but nuts.
That's not crazy people, that's stupid people. That's what
that is straight jacket people. Or marketing teams, half of a marketing team being laid off, right? And a lot of things. And then companies thinking that as long as they have AI, which we talked about in some of the other shows, as long as they have AI and a junior that knows how to work it, let's do that, because that's just a great idea, right?
Yeah, my neighbor's kid can definitely do that. Bring them in. They'll replace the whole marketing team.
Exactly. They have an Instagram account or a TikTok account. Sure, why not have them run our marketing operation? Because that's all it takes, right?
Oh yeah. And similar stuff too is happening in the sales side, in product teams. Where you see people who have been doing great work over time now suddenly are like, oh, I'm looking for my next thing because somebody somewhere decided that the people who are actually building the product and selling the product are not necessary anymore. We have a computer that can do that for us.
I mean, to some degree, that is actually true, right? Because a lot of these jobs will simply go away. But until that is the case, there's still ways to go, right? As our good friend Mr. Pope said, right now AI only knows how to do one thing, right? And for anything else outside of that thing, you need a new AI software. You need something new. And even then, even if you work with ChatGPT or Designer or whatever you want to do for your copywriting, for example, right? On Know Your Flash and so on, you still need to know somebody how to brief, or in modern English, how to prompt that AI software in such a way that something clever comes out at the other end. So there's still some brain power necessary to make the thing sing and dance.
Yeah, I was thinking about, in fact, in the last couple of days, it's happened a couple of different ways. On LinkedIn, one day, maybe earlier this week or last week, I got 2 messages within 20 minutes, the exact same message from 2 different women named Carolyn at the same company who had very generic profile pictures. So either highly automated and they just happen to have the same name, or they were fake completely, just AI spitting stuff out. I've recently seen people, I suspect it's AI, because you read the comments and they're very generic, not super thoughtful or not great insight on posts and stuff. And so I'm sure from those people who are commenting on my posts, I will get a cold reach out sometime too with another AI thing, right? So it's just this weird kind of time where people are starting to just plug in AI solutions, and whether it's the neighbor's kid next door or just somebody who means well and really isn't trained in it, they don't have the skill to actually prompt AI to give them good output, or then the skill, you know, and these are both human skills, right? Of taking what AI gives you and saying, hang on, that's not quite right, and this is very generic, and let me substitute in something like that, and I'm gonna erase that second sentence, right, and make it something that's, you know, logical for the audience that they're trying to get to. But yeah, sales and marketing and product and geez, it seems like it's all over the place these days that people are getting cut back and trying to cut corners.
Yeah, and it isn't that simple, right? However, if you know how to work it, it's a beautiful thing. But I
Mhm.
tested different things, right? There's even one product, I forgot what it's called because there's so many of them actually, where you can have your array of pictures that you upload and then they come back with different
Mhm.
pictures, business and whatever. Worked great for my life, didn't work at all for me, right? And I heard from a lot of other people of color,
Mhm.
right, where it just looks crappy. Like
Mhm.
it somehow matches the skin tone, and that's about as far as it can go, right?
Yeah.
So there's other pitfalls that we are seeing right now, and I think that we have to, as a society, have to get involved on a
Mhm.
very broad spectrum. And that's where I like what Eric said in was it 1 or 2 episodes ago, where he stated that he saw a need to get involved, right? Where he started off as a
Mhm.
programmer, did management, and then went back into programming and programming Python, where he thought that he needed to know how this works
Mhm.
because he didn't just want to be as my professor in Python says, don't be just a user, not just seeing this side, but seeing what's behind there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely necessary.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I gave a presentation to here in Kentucky. There's several groups, but one of them that I've worked with in the past. They teach people to code. Right? People come from all kind of jobs and like technical, non-technical, all kinds of stuff, but they say, "Hey, I feel like I need to code, or my job prospects think I need to code." And we talked about AI for about an hour, and uh, several of them asked about. It seems like such a big mountain to climb to learn to write AI code. I said, "Yeah, yeah, it is," but there's also it's critical that you start to understand what's going on there, even if you can't write the machine language algorithm itself. Can you understand how algorithms work? Can you understand some of the code? Can you read? Can you understand how to process the data? Can you understand the mathematics behind it, right? Any part of it that you can grasp as you're going through this kind of a training, this kind of upskilling, is going to make you more and more valuable in the workplace. It's going to make you be able to understand what that AI is doing, even if you're not working for OpenAI or Stable Diffusion or any of the big guys that are out there.
Yeah. As again we discussed, I think right now the time where we are back at the decision-making time where similar to the medieval ages where people could read or couldn't read.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now it's they can code or at
Yeah.
least read code. It doesn't have to you don't have to actively code in my mind.
Yeah.
But you need to know, as you said, what's going on there. What
Yeah.
are they doing?
Yeah. In medieval times, you didn't need to be an author or a printer, but you
Exactly.
did need to be able to learn and understand and read a bit. Right?
Exactly.
Today, you don't have to be, a machine language PhD, but you do need to understand. You need to get into it a little bit. I think
Yeah.
you're quoting Eric Fraser there is like spot on, where he was like, "No, I need to dig in and be active here and understand this thing." Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And people gotta know. I think it's not so much, but they need to understand what's going on. They need to
Mm-hmm.
understand what is a large language model.
Mm-hmm.
What are these things doing? How are they working? not in terms of how does the code work, but what are the principles behind it?
Mhm.
How is all of that working and functioning to not become the scared whatever person that just says nonsense, right?
Mhm.
You have to be informed, you have to know what's going on to also, and now let's bring it back to a business perspective. If you want to be a manager, you have to understand what those teams are doing, what your product is doing, and what you're actually talking about,
Mhm.
versus just repeating what somebody else dictated you like you're some kind of a puppet, right?
Yeah.
And that is where we talked about it in the context of our interview with Eric or the chat with Eric that I started looking into ChatGPT
Mhm.
about 2 or 3 months ago, right? Because I felt the need that yeah, I have to understand what's going on there. I have to
Yeah.
understand what those people are doing and what that really means for us as a society, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Theo Priestley.
Theo, yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about Wall-E, right?
Yeah.
Where humans in that movie kind of are being portrayed as these dumb bio meatbags that are just being entertained, but they hardly can move anymore, and they're just doing whatever, right? Not really adding to the productivity of their society.
Mhm.
And that's really what is it that we want to do? Do you want to be an active participant and contributor, or are we just consuming whatever is coming on? And then, in that case, how few people do we allow to be the owners of our not faith,
Mhm.
fate, in this one for what's going on in our society?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. I was watching an interview the other day. It's funny that you say faith because I'll talk about that a little bit. But I was watching an interview the other day from 1972 with a rabbi, and he was talking about how everybody around was just seeking their entertainment. Everybody was just seeking to be entertained, and life was about way more than being entertained. It was about really taking ownership. It was about really helping one another, and like that was the rabbi's right point of view.
yeah,
But it was funny because it's 52 years ago now that interview was recorded, and I was like, that dude could be talking about my iPhone, right? Everybody's just consuming this whatever it is and letting other people sort of steer the ship, and we're becoming those Wally giant meat bags, rolling around in flying recliners, right? And we're not taking ownership, and it's a thing that I think we need to do, whether that's a learning about the math and the science and the computer science of it, or whether that's understanding the ethics of it, whether that's understanding sort of the underlying principles, whatever it is, to be able to participate. Um, well, we've called back to every episode this season so far, I think.
yeah, and there's more to come. And I think it's important to also look at it from different angles, right?
Mhm.
Because it's an education, it's a career perspective. Like how do you manage to keep yourself and your career options relevant, right?
Mhm.
Because if you're just a middle of the road marketer that does a bit of brand, that does a bit of copywriting or whatever, but nothing like extraordinary, just a normal marketer with a normal degree, whatever. How long does it take until ChatGPT and Co can actually replace you, right?
Mhm.
With just some junior at the helm and kicking
Yeah.
out the prompts, right?
And if you're in college, how should you be preparing for that career, right? If you've been working 2 years or 5 years, how should you be, you know, reskilling and upskilling? And if you've been working 30 years, how should you be reskilling and upskilling? And
Yeah,
I think about it too, with I have a couple of kids heading to college, about telling them, hey, here are the kinds of things that you should learn no matter what you end up in.
yeah,
You want to go work in this or that or the other thing, great, go. Do what you please, but also understand some of these things that are shaping your world that you're going to have to live in, that you can understand what they're about and what's going on there. So that when they come for you, when the AI comes to replace your job, you understand what's going on and you can then adjust and change and maybe be the AI programmer for it or whatever. Like,
Yeah, that's I had the discussion with my wife the other day. Like if we were young and starting over now, looking at okay, what would we do? It would definitely STEM related. I would
Mhm.
definitely take several semesters of math,
Yep.
even though I hate it. But it's so important and so much of it is now the foundation of everything that's going on. Because if you really want to have a relatively good time programming, that you should have the it's not the math itself, but it's the concepts and the ways of thinking
Mhm.
that math teaches you that should be the basis for everything that you do, right? Even though you may not need it in your job that day, but your job is gonna evolve in one
Mhm.
direction or the other, where eventually it will take over, right?
Yeah.
Technology will come, and without math, you're gonna have a hard time getting
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's great to learn critical thinking skills. And I think sometimes even as quote unquote grown-ups, we forget, right? We just get entertained and we get in the middle of the social media outrage machine or whatever it is. But even more than that, I think you're exactly right. I think with the critical thinking skills, you've got to have some depth of understanding of the things around it
Yeah,
in order to think critically, right? You can learn the critical thinking skills, but if you don't understand how things are working, or at least the basics of it, at least some understanding of, oh, there's a lot of math behind this, and here's the kinds of math
yeah,
that are there, and there's, you know, humans wrote some code to make this thing do this. Here's how they thought about writing that code, right? And some just pieces of that. Then you can start to think critically about the changes and where you want to be in those changes, right?
yeah, absolutely. So we are pushing our son. Our son is a bit younger than your kids. Our son
Yep.
is 8, going on 9.
So he'll start college next year then. That's good.
Yeah, attitude teenager. But we are pushing him hard towards at least a good STEM understanding, and
Yeah.
he's already learning Scratch,
Hmm.
which is a relevant for Python, for example.
It's a
Just
fun little
so,
program. Yeah.
sorry?
It's a fun little program. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so that he has experience with the way of thinking,
Hmm.
right? And the way of, okay, this is the approach to how things are being done, right?
Hmm.
That you can't tell a robot, hey, go over there. Now for the robot, it's step, 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 turn around, step, step, turn around, step, step, right?
Yeah.
The sequential thinking and so on. Um, yeah, and I'm super excited, right? It sounds like gloom and doom, but I'm super excited about the times that are coming
Hmm.
because it's such a everything is happening at such a great speed that yeah, yeah, I'm just curious, right? I'm just curious, and I'm not satisfied, and I'm not also not trusting enough
Yeah.
for somebody just to put something in front of me and say, yeah, well, that's how it works. No, I wanna I wanna see for myself, right? I wanna open up the hood and see for myself. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna do much with the engine
Hmm.
to bridge a gap into the car topic.
Yeah.
And I want to see if there's an engine, and that's what the general principles are of how that thing is working,
Hmm.
right? And why the good old gas engines and the gas guzzlers and whatsoever is an outdated system.
Hmm.
And while EVs are not perfect, nowhere near perfect, nor the infrastructure nor anything, just the engines themselves, right? Because with all the hoopla, and that's something that I looked at the Curmudgeon show with Jason Camisa and Tim Hyper Scott.
Yeah.
All the hoopla that's going on in the engine, right? Everything, the cylinders, and everything that's going on. At the end of the day, all that stuff is just going on to turn something.
Yep.
It's the old principle that we had from the wind energy, the water energy, whatever happens, it's just turning something. And that is something where the electric engine has it perfect. It's really, what is it, 90% of all the energy going in there actually ends up in turning that thing that needs to be turned.
Yeah, very high efficiency. Yeah.
Extreme, yeah.
Yeah, my wife and I were driving down the road the other day, and we passed an Amazon distribution warehouse, and we apparently passed it at the time that people were going out to make deliveries because we saw about a half a dozen of the Rivian electric vans that Amazon has bought and that were custom designed for Amazon. And we were talking about it, how that it just made sense because they're not going very far from that warehouse. They're going out right into the city, kind of around them, and then they're coming back and they can charge. But also, we were sitting on opposite sides of our gas-powered vehicle, and in between us was the transmission shift knob and the powertrain, hump that goes back the length of the car to the back wheels. And we talked about how that electric van doesn't have that. It's all batteries in the bottom and then just electric motors on the wheels. And so you can, for the function of what you want, that electric vehicle, it's a great innovation.
Yeah.
But is that the perfect vehicle for everybody? No. But it's a great application for that one. So, Amazon kind of thinking forward and going and talking to Rivian and, sort of working with them and designing this thing. Thought through a specific problem they had, a specific use case they had, and built a thing that just works really well, for that use case and meets their needs because they want to be able to be a cleaner company and different kinds of things like that too, which are all good. Right?
Yeah.
But not everybody's that way. Not everybody's there.
And that is totally fine, right? I mean, I'm at super extremes just within myself, right? We have an electric vehicle that we use for all the daily stuff. And then we have old timers that are super gas guzzlers that we use for fun driving, right? Where we don't just go, I mean, rarely, sometimes I do that going to school, pick up my son and do whatever. But on a regular basis, that's what the EV is for. Because it's much more efficient, it's much more secure, obviously because the other cars are 35 and 54 years with right? It's just so much stuff that you have to do to keep these things driving. Meanwhile, the EV, it doesn't matter, right? And I have to think about filling this thing up because I just plug it in the evening and it's just full. And filling it up for less range doesn't cost 180 euros, which I paid for my old Type 560. That is in miles, what is it? In miles 250 on a good day? That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
For the same amount of money, I can drive the EV roughly 1,500, 1,600 kilometers.
Jeez.
Bit different efficiency there.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to take away the weekend car, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have the fun driving weekend out on nice little B roads and whatever. But it's for the daily routine, modern cars with modern software, and maybe not even smelling and stinking and making all kinds of noises.
Yeah.
Great. Give me that. Better yet, make it self-driving because I really don't want to stand in traffic. I'd rather watch stuff and play on my phone. Than doing all that stupid driving, which is not really driving. It's standing, 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 rolling, standing, 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 rolling,
There you
standing.
go.
right? And then looking for a parking spot. Yeah.
Nice.
But that is a challenge. That
Yeah.
shift is a challenge, right? There's the Teslas and the Rivians and the Lucids and everything that comes from China
Hmm.
in a world that are really taking on the legacy car
Hmm.
makers. As I said,
Yeah.
we have for some reason right now all of our cars are Mercedes, and I had a Tesla for a couple of years as a company car. That thing had software updates, sometimes twice a day, couple of times in a week, whatever. All I saw was sometimes if there was something major, I had a little window propping up telling me what new features I had. I was like, oh wait, right. And same thing with our Merc. Just recently in year 3, here was the first update, and it ended up with all of the functions didn't work anymore. We didn't have no heater anymore, no GPS anymore, no music, no nothing, because that one software update didn't work. I couldn't I couldn't do anything with it. There was no resetting, no unrolling,
Nice.
whatever, rollback, nothing. We had to book a service with Mercedes, and they kept us waiting for 2.5 months because they just didn't have an appointment. And in my mind, it's like, hey, listen, this car that is roughly 30% more expensive than a similar Tesla,
Hmm.
what am I paying for? Right? Is it because the door gaps are so perfect? I don't care about the door gaps. Is it raining in? Yes, no, no, then leave me alone. And my son doesn't like the Merc anyways because it doesn't fart.
Yeah, Tesla has the fun noises, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the challenge, right? How does that industry, the legacy manufacturers there, how do they make the shift from being a car company that happens to have some software to essentially being a software company that builds a car around it?
Yeah. I read an article a while back that said General Motors is essentially today an insurance company that makes cars because they have so many retirees and pension plans and medical care and everything else for so many people that they actually spend more a year on that stuff than they do on building vehicles, which is what drives the income of the company.
Yeah,
I think sometimes when you get those big companies, they end up with that. This is the way we've always done it, or we've built incentives for our managers that they don't want to miss their bonus, right? They want to get their perks or whatever. And then you have an upstart like a Rivian, like a Tesla, like all these other guys who their whole goal is to take over market share from those big guys. And so they're willing to take risks. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to do all this stuff. BMW wants you to pay a subscription to get your seat heaters to work. Tesla's like, nah, I give you new features over the air for free. Let's just push a software update. Here you now you can do a new thing.
hey, now you have Apple Music.
Yeah,
Surprise!
it's a whole different, a whole different mindset of being a new startup company versus being a legacy company. But then you look at them too. Companies like Rivian and Tesla, they're big companies. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, right? They're big companies, thousands and thousands and thousands of employees.
Yeah.
They're not your typical Silicon Valley, 6 guys in a garage kind of startup, right? They're
No.
traditionally they're big companies. In any other space, we'd go, wow, look at that giant company, but they're only just whatever 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years old. So
Yeah. And I'm a car nerd, right? I'm really curious to see down the road how that will all work out, right? Because I think even Tesla leaves a lot of room for the next thing coming up
Mhm.
from below and taking their place away, right? And that might be whatever is coming out of the BYDs or whatever is coming out of China.
Yep.
Because they still have a lot of gaps, Tesla that is, because
Mhm.
of whatever Musk likes or dislikes and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's also, practically speaking, there's a manufacturing efficiency, right? You've got to optimize a manufacturing line to make whatever that is, right? Whether it's a rocket or a car or a pair of sneakers, you've got to optimize your production line to make a lot of that to keep the cost down for people. And I've been seeing news articles. I can't wait to see that it actually is going to happen. That they're talking about electric cars that are potentially self-driving in the $20,000-$25,000 range,
Yeah.
which is wonderful, right? It makes that kind of vehicle available to a lot bigger audience. A lot more people can take advantage of it. But still, when you come out with that model, you've got to then optimize your production line for whatever that is. Somebody else is going to go optimize their production line for something different, and maybe that's the Mercedes and the BMWs and the Toyotas and the Fords. You know, their problem is that they spend too much time optimizing a production line to to tease out the little 0.001% of profitability, where somebody like Tesla optimizes their production line for, we know we're going to have to change this car, right? We know we're going to have improvements to it in 6 months. So I've got to be able to just put that new electronics in or that new whatever in, and it's still got to just roll right out the line. So how do I optimize for that, knowing that I'm making other sacrifices, right? No, nothing is perfect. I can't have everything.
Yeah, I think, in my honest opinion, I think that, and from a business side, right? The way that the Chinese companies are being led, without any comment, but I think they have the efficiency. They will
Mhm.
get to the efficiency to a much higher degree because whoever their CEO is, right, or whatever that top management is, they will not have a Cybertruck coming out.
Mhm.
Some individual dream and vision or whatever, they won't do that. And just for that reason, they would have skipped the Cybertruck and the big truck. I forgot what it is, the semi,
Mhm.
and whatever,
Mhm.
and would have gone right for the 20K car, right?
Yep.
And that would be out by now because I think the step from the Model 3 and the Model Y going down market to the cheaper model would have been much easier than to put out a car in built based on a material that doesn't want to be shaped. Anything that just straight is I think quite obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think there's definitely, you're starting to get into now today the mass market potential.
yeah,
But I think still there's, now, if you're listening to this and you're living on Mars, we were probably wrong. But you'll have the history to prove us out. But I think that there's so much more to go in terms of efficiencies and technologies and things like that to
yeah,
get to full market acceptance, because there are still plenty of situations where, in the you talked about the semi, right? In that line, there's stuff that where your truck just drives right around your factory area, and there's stuff where your truck just drives around your town or your city, and then there's stuff where the truck drives across the country or across multiple countries, across the continent. And those are very different use cases, right? There's stuff where your car, you talked about it earlier too. Your car, you go and pick up your son at school, and then you go back and forth and get the things around town, and then, well, now I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to drive some hundreds of miles of different use cases. And we haven't got to the point where you can optimize one form factor for everything. So the way we optimized in the past is we optimized for power and utility, but
mhm,
then we learned that the cost is efficiency. So you talked about your 90% efficient electric motor versus whatever 30% or 25% efficient internal combustion engine. That's your trade-off by making something that has more power
I
and
paid for it today.
versatility. Yeah, yeah. You pay 180 euros to drive to the corner store. Um, but yeah, I think there's so much more in terms of technology to be gained, um, over time, whether that's the next 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, you see how far vehicles have come in 15 years that we're talking about. Some of these legacy car makers are just falling behind terribly.
Yeah.
But it's only been 10 or 15 years that they've now gone from the market leaders to the trailers. Well, 10 or 15 years from now, somebody else will be the market leader. There'll be some other new cool technology, some battery life, some other things, self-driving. They'll drive down to the store and pick up your stuff for you. Right? So,
And I think what we see is a lot of protectionism.
yeah.
Is we're not talking about solutions anymore. We talk about prevention, right? Don't take away whatever I want to do, or just don't take my money away, instead of saying, how can we as a society become better at what it is that we have to do? I think the entire, and let's stay with the topic for a second, the entire discussion about how far can I drive with my EV and how long does it take to charge, is, from my perspective, absolutely nonsense.
Mhm.
That is not the right question that's being asked. In my mind is, how can I make sure that whenever I stop and go for a snack, go for shopping, go whatever, that my car is being charged right then and there without me
Mhm.
having to do anything about it, right? Just like I have my phone and put it on something and then it's being charged. I don't have to plug in a cable and do whatever. It
Yep.
should just work, right? And then if I have a long distance trip, yeah, okay. But again, who really drives 200 miles in one go without having, I can't.
Yeah.
Thing right here. For me, it's about 100, 150 miles maybe. And then I'm hungry. I'm thirsty and whatever. And then soon
kids gotta go pee.
thereafter, I
That's
will
it.
have
So,
to
yeah.
recycle what I just ate, and
Yep.
it's a deadly cycle for me.
Yeah.
But and how can we build that technology so that it's more efficient and more sustainable, right? Those are the questions that I would like to talk about, not why you still need a gas car for all use cases. That's not necessary.
Yeah.
Like, keep the fun car, keep your Porsche, keep your classic car, keep whatever floats your boat, right? But for the daily commute, for the delivery services, for public transportation, those noisy buses in New York are terrible. These are the loudest engines I've ever heard. I would welcome them to be electric, right? And nobody would get harmed if those buses would be electric.
Well, here in Louisville, they have buses that circle the downtown, right? A couple of bus routes that just kind of circle around the whole downtown corridor. And those are electric. And they've been electric now for sometime in the last couple of years. They put them in, and they put a charging station, a couple of charging stations, kind of at common places where they just stop. And so the bus goes and does sort of a half-hour route around town and then stops at the thing, and there's a big charger that lowers down on top of it and just charges it up for like 15 minutes while the bus driver goes out and does his thing and comes back, and they're loading up, and that's just the way they set up the route, and it's nice and quiet, and it's very comfortable, and it's cool on a hot day, and it's warm on a cold day, and so the technology exists to do it. You have to be intentional about it and say, here's the intelligent way to do it. I've heard a half a dozen different people propose some model of subscribe to a car rather than buy a car. So you just have a car when you need a car, and it comes and gets you. And you think about today with some percentage of people sort of working remotely, working from home a lot, becomes pretty sensible thing. If I don't have to get up like everybody else and drive in the certain hour of the morning, whatever it is, to get to the office, and a certain hour of the afternoon to get home, then maybe I don't need a car in the garage. I can just push the button on the app, and in 5 minutes a car shows up, and off I go, right? So it's easy. And I know in a lot of cities there's many people rent cars when they need them rather than
Yeah.
rather
These
than own them.
on-demand mobility is definitely something that you see more and more.
Yeah.
Even here in Cologne, which is yeah, it's not the most modern city in the world. But you still see it. You see everything from scooters to bikes to cars. It's just available from different providers, right?
Mhm.
And I think that makes a ton of sense. It doesn't make sense for us because we live right at the city, at the outskirts of the city, and most of the services don't quite reach to us. So I would
Yeah.
have to park my car and walk 10 minutes and to get home, which is not as much fun if it is raining and you have your shopping. And we're not Seattle, but we know what Seattle feels like.
Yep.
So that is not a fun prospect there. But yeah, I mean that's the city, right? That's the concept, and that's the future that we're in. And my question to you would be, how do you manage the turmoil with all these changes coming? Because a lot of people feeling super stressed.
Mhm.
They feel left behind.
Yep.
We talked about technology, but there's a lot of society and personal and interpersonal things that are changing, and how do you talk about certain things? How do you trust each other, and what is it that people want to do with themselves? So how do you, in your mind, how do you keep peace alive in those crazy times that we are in, right?
Yeah. I think when I think about the sort of the day by day stuff, right? There's two fears. There's the fear of the change, right? Or the, what's going to happen. We talked about some of that, like, what should I be studying? What should I be doing? Right? How should I be prepared? And then there's what we colloquially call the fear of missing out, FOMO, which isn't itself a fear. It's just kind of an anxiety that I might be missing something. I might not be either getting all the things that I need or knowing all the things that I need or missing out on something super interesting or fun or cool. And I think both of those end up being really distracting,
Yeah.
right? No matter what you do, that kind of fear ends up being really distracting. Sometimes paralyzing. I mean, it can get really bad, but it's always just like a noise in the back of your head, right? It's at least an annoyance, a distraction. And so one of the things that I try pretty hard to do is to spend some intentional quiet time, like away from that stuff. I've already gone through. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I've gone through this process over the last couple of months of stepping way back from social media, stepping way back from news media. I'm still on LinkedIn every day. I work and have some stuff on LinkedIn, and occasionally on Facebook or X or something, Instagram, whatever. But if I find myself scrolling it, I like just shut it down and get away from it. And I've uninstalled a bunch of those apps from my phone, because that increases the noise level.
Yeah.
And so instead, I try to do things that decrease the noise level. About half the time, maybe less than half the time, a little bit less than half the time when I'm driving somewhere, I don't have any music or anything going. Like one direction of the trip, I'll just drive in silence, and maybe coming back, I'll have music on or listen to a podcast, or obviously always the Crazy People podcast is always on in my car.
Right.
Why would that be? I don't know. But I think that's so important is just that ability to shift gears a little bit and do it intentionally, to say, yes, it's crazy. Yes, there's noise. Yes, there's worry. Yes, there's concern. And if I just take a half a step back from it and take a deep breath and say, let me be still for a moment, it helps me personally then focus on what's actually important. Not what I'm scared of, not what I'm worried about, not what I'm missing out on, but what actually means something to me, my faith, my family, my friends. That's important. And if I'm yelling at my wife because I'm all worked up over some news story that I read, that's just a waste of time. Like, why do that, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Maurice? What do you do to kind of find a little bit of peace in the crazy?
Well, for me, it's music, actually.
Mhm.
Listening to music. I don't listen to radio. I listen to music, whatever, and also do a lot of different music. Because otherwise, I have the feeling that it's just playing to one part of my brain, and I need different genres of music to really holistically entertain me.
Mhm.
I gotta admit, I have a Instagram account for my dog, right? To share dog pictures and not have to do that in my own stream. But there, I sometimes just watch all the shorts and sit there with my son, and we giggle about the funny animal videos. I think that is something where you spend too much time, but it's also fun to just let loose and laugh at whatever somebody else is
But
putting up.
you know, I think that's key though, right? Is finding the laughter in it
Mm.
rather than doom scrolling, right?
Yeah.
Let's laughter scroll. Let me sit there with my son and look at it and laugh together rather than me sitting alone and doing that. Those kinds of things are awesome. Chris.
By knowing the algorithm and knowing how algorithm works,
There you
right?
go. Circle back
I
around.
know that a couple of searches
Yeah.
will kind of, and then there's even if my private algorithm for my profile, I know that if there's too much stuff that I don't like, there's a couple of industries that do a fantastic job of cleaning up your feed with their advertisements. That could be education,
Mhm.
right? Or it could be, what else is there? Education works the best for me, right? Then I just search any university in executive education, and then all the other garbage that I don't want to see just goes away,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
if anything else that I don't like, that is, I don't know, hateful or negative comes in, I proactively take time to tell the algorithm, don't show this to me anymore,
Yeah.
right? And if I want to digest news, I do it with intention.
Mhm.
I also make sure that I read news from different angles,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not just this side of the aisle, but also read that side of the aisle,
Mhm.
right? And try to read something from a foreign country talking about the same topic. So then I
Mhm.
have three dimensions, and then I still have to think about what I actually believe. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, ah, they all are crazy, and then go back to puppies or sports, right? Um, yeah, and I try to, if I'm watching stuff, I try to watch something about physics that kind of teases my brain, and it's not
Mm.
just
Mhm.
stupid
Yeah.
noise,
Mhm.
right? Something that I like to think about. Be it the asteroid that's coming in 2029 and hopefully don't get in too close, or whatever. Physics, right?
Mhm.
Um, and have discussions about whatever. And I like that, right? Have intelligent discussions and intercourse. Because the good thing about science is there's no opinion. There's
Yeah.
right or wrong, and you can talk about the interpretation of stuff and what it may mean
Yeah.
in certain cases, but there is not an opinion, right? There's a thesis, and then the thesis gets proved or disapproved, but no opinions. That's how the
Yeah.
entire science community works. Somebody figures something out and reaches out to the community to say, hey, what do you guys think?
Yep.
And then everybody else tries to approve it or disapprove it, and then whatever happens, that's what it is. And not that this is just your opinion. No, one plus
Yeah.
one is two. That's not an opinion, that is a fact.
Oh yeah. Well, and the cool thing too about science, I love listening to guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson, but
Yeah.
also people who explored, even deeper different topics, right? But there's always somebody working on some new interpretation or some new further study, right? There's always something that, hey, we saw this kind of a star and now we're looking for this kind of a star. We measured this thing and now we're trying to measure that thing. And oh, we figured out this type of atomic particle and now we're trying to figure out that type of atomic. Right? There's always a next thing, and here's where they're going and here's what they think they can find and here's why they think they're trying to prove that. And so you can actually then think through things. It's not just, here's the event and here's 75 people's opinion and anger and everything else about it. It's like, no, hang on, this is a thing. And the other thing too that I like about that is that sometimes um, people tell really cool stories about the people who are doing the research and who are trying to find the whatever it is in outer space or in the deep ocean or whatever. And how people spend, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of their life looking for this one kind of a sea creature or this one kind of a star or whatever, right? And it's just really cool to see that people have spent that much time, like really paying attention over a long period of time and getting really good at something.
Yeah.
And then I look at me and see how much I zigzag around and go, oh, I should probably listen to some of those people and maybe stay the course of something for a long time.
Yeah. Apply some critical thinking and stay
Yes,
to a topic.
there you go.
In their context is, can you stick to a topic for a day? I've been doing this for 50 years and you can
Yeah.
focus on something for a day?
I got 5 minutes. Is that enough? Can we go?
Yeah, if you look at our shorts and our video
There you go.
clips, it's more like 90 seconds.
Yeah.
That's what it is, 90 seconds. And even those are not being watched all the way, right? It's I think we have an average of 54 or something.
Yeah.
Which is
90
good.
seconds is too long. Don't make me watch it more than a minute. I'm out.
I know. What the hell is going on with us?
But that is actually a good point, that there are great little shorts. We talked about Instagram and stuff, and our channel on YouTube has shorts and all kind of stuff. There are great little
More
nuggets
of
that
them,
you can get,
sorry.
and more coming, yeah. But there are great nuggets that you can get, right? Small bite-sized things.
Yeah.
But if all you eat is nuggets all day long, that's not super healthy. Right. So go get some nuggets. Awesome. They're cool. They're great. And then also when you see something that interests you, go and dig in for more than 5 minutes. Yeah. And
Take
see if
some
it's a
time.
50-year thing. Maybe it'll be a 50-year thing, but
Exactly. Or to stay with your food food metaphor, go take some time. Dress up, go to a restaurant,
yes.
have an entree, have the full meal, right? 4, 5, 6 courses as the French do, and just enjoy the experience of eating.
Yep.
Right?
Sometimes pineapple on pizza is great. Sometimes it's a 7-course meal with friends over a nice dinner and conversation and a glass of wine and whatever,
Yeah.
And both of those have value.
7 courses, it doesn't mean that pineapple pizza cannot be part of one of those courses. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Sir, we were bringing you the 3rd course now, the pineapple pizza course. Here you are. Yes.
It's just a little more pineapple.
Very nice. Very nice, sir. Well, thank you. Thank you for that discussion.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic. By the way, speaking of taking time to eat, let's end with this anecdote. I was in Italy with our dear colleague from the company that we both used to work
Mhm.
at. And he wanted to pick me up at 7:30. And I had a call at around 10:30 p.m., right? And
Mhm.
he was like, that's not gonna work. I'm like, why? Do we have to drive that far? No, but we have to eat and we have to take time. I was like, well, it's gonna be 3 hours. What are you talking about? And then eventually the call was canceled. just happenstance.
Mhm.
And we left the restaurant at 11:30, and we ate the entire time. That Italian lady from that restaurant was a little mom pop shop around the
Mhm.
corner from where he lives, and we ate the entire time. She had food and more food and more food and more food, but at a speed where I digested what was 3 courses ago. I
Mhm.
had digested that, so I had room for the next one to come in, and I was just keeping at a speed where I could not stop eating.
But those things are the kind of things that even years later you talk about. You say, I remember that day. Right? So you gotta seek out those experiences. But yeah, it's not always nuggets and pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, and then one last bit on
Yeah.
term of, and I think we should end it on that. As John Pinette says, favorite comedian of our friend Bob, in Italy, it's always all you can eat.
Yes, sir. There you go.
That's just what it is.
There you go.
All of you that have been listening, I hope you had some fun. I hope you heard something interesting. Whatever you do, come back in 2 weeks or watch a bunch of our shorts, and let's see who's next. Next crazy person coming in. You have a good one. Take care.